You've felt it, haven't you? That sense that the world around you isn't quite as solid as it seems. Sometimes it's a flicker at the edge of your vision, or a strange voice in the dark that you know you couldn't have heard.
I see you.
But what if, in these fleeting moments, you're catching glimpses of shadows? Shadows cast by the light leaking from beneath the doorway to another world. From a flight attendant's encounter with a vengeful gremlin at 30,000 feet, to the whispering waters of Harpers Ferry, where the currents carry the restless dead. Join us on this episode of BELIEFHOLE as we take hold of that shuddering handle on the door to elsewhere. Creak it open, just a crack, and peek in to the hallway at the edge of the world.
Conspiracy,
Synchronicity,
Sasquatch,
homunculus,
alien races,
Satanism in Hollywood, MK Ultra, Tartaria.
There's like a whole. I've been watching this one guy.
Close the door, Ed.
Jeremy, close your door!
What's the
Inner Earth Disagreements.
Ghost Dad.
I like that movie.
Dogman,
Bohemian Grove,
Corey Feldman,
Magicians Are Demons,
Specters and
Spirit
Spooks,
Summonings,
Paralysis, Strange Disappearances,
Sky whale phenomenon.
Alternative History, Shadow People.
Shh, quiet. I'm trying to say words with the mouth.
It's getting dicey out there. Poltergeists.
That's cool.
Anunnaki. What is the moon? Elf Towers.
I would never talk about. That's old.
Y2K. Cover-ups. Apocalyptic catastrophe. Vampire. Well,
hello, Jeremy and Chris.
Hi.
hello, Jonathan. Welcome back from the break.
Good to be back. It was a crazy break,
It's a crazy break full of,
things and stuff.
yes,
A lot of stuff done, as you guys have seen. A lot of announcements coming out.
updates for members.
Yeah.
The whole is exploding.
Yes, and more on that later on.
What's coming up today, Chris? Because we do have some incredible tales, true tales from real listeners of the show.
We do. We have a lot of unique stories in this episode, a lot of pretty incredible. It runs the gamut from crazy interdimensional dresser drawers,
What?
which I'm very excited about. We have an actual gremlin eyewitness encounter by a certified flight attendant. I'm really excited for that one.
Oh, that's awesome.
Been hanging on that one for a while. And we have a pretty terrifying story towards the end of the episode that I call Dark Synagogue, but it's about a group who are staying at an abandoned demon-infested synagogue in Cleveland, Ohio. And it is pretty terrifying.
And that's just some of them, man. And we've got haunted urns. We've got forests that walk away.
Oh, yeah.
We've got invading the afterlife through dreams. It's a very, very extensive episode on all kinds of topics, guys, but it's going to be great.
Yes.
What's the first story, my friends, my brothers? For all that don't know, we are brothers.
That's true. And I apologize in advance for new listeners who are trying to figure out if this is one person or two people
Or three.
Or
or three people.
Or three.
One person talking to themselves.
Threeple. We are a threeple.
Three brothers of the whole, Jeremy, John, and Chris.
Wait, I think that's like a relationship thing.
I think it's kind of obvious that I'm a different person, but
Yeah, people still, the comment is, this is just one guy? Or is
their
it,
ears are not very adept at noticing differences.
there are chunks where you aren't speaking.
That's true.
So they might not have heard all of us talk at the same time. But yes, we are three. Brothers three.
Why don't we start with this super unique account of an actual gremlin encounter by a flight attendant?
Oh, this is a fantastic account.
Really?
That's right, John.
That's right.
We have corroboration finally.
We did a gremlin episode.
Is John Lithgow involved?
John Lithgow?
That is John Lithgow actually calling in.
We did an episode, was it last season? I know we dropped it on the main feed. It was a members only.
Yeah, the Gremlins episode.
We dropped it around Christmas time. Deep dive into gremlins.
It focused on encounters in the air with British air pilots from World War II. But yeah, that was a deep dive into the reality of gremlins. And I think we proved it, frankly. But we didn't have a firsthand account from someone in their own voice. And today, you get to hear that. You get to hear the evidence.
Yeah, and speaking of in their own voice, I was waiting to do this one because I was waiting to hear back from her. She actually submitted it a year ago because she had said she was hoping that we could tell her story. Was hoping that she wouldn't be recognized because she still works with the airline and She didn't want her friends to know or think that she was crazy. So I responded and I was like, because she tells it so well. And it's something about hearing it in someone's voice. So I said, can we disguise the voice? And she finally got back and said, that's okay. So her voice will be disguised for this,
She's a real human.
but it is an incredible story.
This is called Gremlins on a Plane. This comes to us from an anonymous flight attendant.
I'm trying to squeeze all of this into a 5-minute speak pipe, but it's kind of difficult. So I was a flight attendant at the time for the company that I work for. This is probably during 2020, 2021. There's a guy on the plane who's just a grade A douche canoe, horrible.
Douche canoe.
Love that term.
Douche canoe. That is funny.
Anyway, I had a really bad interaction with this guy on the plane. So after the flight's over and everybody's getting off, he's standing in the aisle a couple of rows in front of me, and I'm still pissed about this. I am mean mugging the out of this man. I'm not gonna lie. And as I'm staring daggers into the back of this man's head, this entity emerges from the floor of the plane. It was literally something out of a movie where it just kind of manifested out of the floor of the plane. It crawled up the back of the seat, jumped onto the guy's back, and he's obviously completely unaware of this, and crawled up his back and sat on his shoulder. And I'm just staring in shock. I'm kind of fascinated and horrified all at the same time. And this creature was about the size of a house cat or a small monkey, possibly. It wasn't huge, but it wasn't small. And it was very much like a shadow entity where it didn't have defined features. However, I was able to discern features in my mind's eye. That doesn't sound like it makes any sense, but I'm pretty sure you guys can understand what I'm trying to convey. So it had leathery skin, the body of it was more visible, so to speak, than the actual head. The body had leathery skin. It was kind of bony, but it wasn't bony malnourished. It just kind of had little pokey features elbow and, just kind of gangly. And he had these little paws. They weren't there was no fur, no hair or anything, but it almost reminded me of little raccoon hands. These gnarly little hands that I could see gripping this guy's shoulder where he sat kind of sideways on his shoulder. And a tail, he had a tail and distinctive ears, little pointy ears. I've never seen anything like this. I've seen plenty of paranormal things. I've seen shadow creatures and entities before, but never like this. I've never seen anything manifest in front of me. And I'm shocked. I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing, even though this is not something that's particularly new to me. And I was kind of scared because I knew that this creature was there. I just knew that I had manifested this creature through my anger. Because of how visceral my anger and loathing was towards, he had really been, I don't even remember what this guy did, but it was, it flew all over me, apparently. And I knew that I had conjured this creature to attach itself to him, almost like an evil eye kind of thing. But yeah, this creature sat on his shoulder, and as the guy got off the plane and he turned to go out the forward door, the creature turned and looked at me and just kind of maintained eye contact with me as he stepped off the plane. And all of this interaction took maybe less than a minute, maybe 30 seconds or so. I had no idea what I had seen. I got on with some friends and described what I had just experienced, and one of them had just bought a gremlin bell for her son who had a motorcycle, and she was like, it kind of sounds like a gremlin. And at the time I had no idea they were associated with planes. I've never seen the movie, none of that. And I Googled the picture, and there's a illustration of a gremlin on Google, and it looks almost identical to what I saw. I think it has wings, and what I saw did not have wings. But then I heard your expansion episode maybe a year later on gremlins, and my jaw was on the floor listening to that episode. So yeah, super fascinating. I've got a lot more stories if you're ever interested.
Wow. There it is, guys.
Crazy.
You gotta watch that anger.
Yeah. You don't want to get on the wrong side of her.
Just casting gremlins on people.
Just throwing gremlins at douche canoes. Such a great term. Oh, man. That was fantastic.
Yeah, wild story.
So fascinating. I wondered if we'd ever hear from someone who worked in the airline industry if they'd had an experience with some kind of manifestation like this.
I'm never making anyone angry ever again. You just never know who's going to be. That's wild. If that's just like, are you a witch?
I think you're only at risk of that if you're on a plane. I feel like these specific entities, the Gremlin, I mean, of course, you could probably manifest all kinds of things in the world, but it seems like in the atmosphere, in this setting, that's where the Gremlins seem to exist. They're, as we covered in our episode, they have this kind of, at least this kind of gremlin, a wispy, almost
Astral
kind of cloud-like materialization, the way that they come into the world, the way that they've been witnessed throughout history, that they're almost like
the Charles Lindbergh account.
Yeah. They're almost, these kind of wispy atmospheric life forms that can kind of manifest.
Well, it is interesting. It made me wonder, like, she's talking about manifesting through her intention, maybe unintentionally, but through her anger. I was thinking, to your point, what if, depending on where you are geographically or atmospherically, you might call up different things unintentionally.
Yeah.
Like you are in the realm of the gremlin, or what we call the gremlin, that, has been seen in World War I, World War II, whatnot. So that's what comes.
Yeah.
With your anger, like a genie.
And then underwater, you get like a merman conjured, some sort of
Merman.
a merman.
And what's interesting too is she has a follow up that she said she actually was trained in airplane safety. That was like her specialty. So it was a weird kind of coincidence.
Well, apparently you didn't get the memo about not
conjuring gremlins.
Yeah, you get the gremlin memo. That's like airplane safety number 1.
Do not conjure gremlins.
Rule number 1.
Well, how horrible would that be if she conjures it, it sits on his shoulder, and then just starts pulling cables from the... Oh, wow. What a cool story, though.
Where's John? John, let's go.
Yeah.
Okay.
If any of you guys out there have additional corroborative accounts, definitely reach out and let us know. And we've spoken to her. We have more information, so we know more about where she works, who she is, but of course, it will remain anonymous. But just suffice it to say that she is real, and I believe her.
Just like you are.
I believe anyone who uses the term douche canoe.
That's so great. I don't think I've heard that before.
I've never heard that.
It's a mark of sincerity.
Very visual. Well,
that's a good way to start this episode.
Speaking of canoes, let's kayak together down the river to Harpers Ferry.
Ooh.
A land steeped in mystery, a quaint village, historical in nature, that is, it is like hugged, it's hugged, if you will, by rivers.
Aww.
Rivers that will play a part in this story. This comes from Dillon Beyond, and I call this the Drowned Girl of Harpers Ferry. It's a classic little tale. Here we go.
Howdy, my name's Dillon Beyond. This story takes place maybe 6 years ago here in the great state of West Virginia, where I have spent just about my entire life happily. Me and my wife, well, at the time girlfriend, had just graduated high school. We had dated all through school. As soon as we graduated, I moved out of my house and into her house. And of course, her parents weren't exactly super psyched at the idea of us sleeping in the same bed together. But if we were lucky, they would let us, sleep on the couch together or something and just relax there and, watch a movie or something. Well, one of the nights we did this, I woke up late, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. Nobody else awake, nobody else moving. And right in front of me, looming over me, is a sopping wet girl. I mean, she's maybe, she's young. She's very young. And she's not looking at me angry or scared, just inquisitive. Who is this? Who's here in this place? Well, I just was scared, to tell you the truth. The spike of adrenaline that went through me. But I was always told if you saw something like that, never to interact or else it becomes worse. So I mustered up everything I had and I rolled over and forced myself to close my eyes and went back to just cuddling my, now wife, and just forgot that I ever saw a damn thing. Well, way down the road, I bring it up to my in-laws. I was like, yeah, this one time I was sleeping here, y'all's couch, and, I saw this drowned girl. And my mother-in-law goes, oh, you saw Ivy's old friend. She used to talk to the drowned girl all the time. I tell you, the adrenaline that went through me upon that, hearing that, was like you can't believe. And sure enough, my wife had full conversations and would play with this, girl when she was little. And I got to tell you, I don't think the girl is stuck to the house. I think it's Harpers Ferry. Up on Bolivar Heights, where me and my wife were actually married, it looks down on all of Harpers Ferry, right down into the river, right into the town, and it's beautiful. Amazing spot. If you ever Google it, you'll know why we chose to be married there. Well, in the summertime, regrettably, at least once or twice a year, if you're out there late at night, a helicopter will be going in between the mountains with a searchlight pointed, at the water. And obviously they're searching for somebody who was lost earlier that day or that night, fell into the river, and they're searching for them. And one time I was up there and I saw that, and it sparked in my mind, I think that girl drowned in the river. I don't think she drowned in the bathtub or anything like that. I think that girl is stuck and trapped to that river. And I think specifically when you have that much water moving so close to these homes and places people spend their lives, it holds that energy, the energy from the water. Or at least that's my theory. Because I can tell you, me and my wife have many stories to share. I know this one didn't have any giant spiders like the one I sent in, but I tell you, we have many more, from hearing footsteps running up behind us in graveyards. It's just all kinds of crazy things that have happened right here in Harpers Ferry. It's a one-of-a-kind place, I can tell you that. It's a simple story. Some might call it a cliche to see a drowned girl. But I tell you, in that moment, it was 110% adrenaline, and as real as could be. That's all I can say. But hopefully I'll get to hear this on the show, and I can't wait to share more stories with you. Please reach out if you have any interest. Keep up what you all do. Peace.
Awesome.
That is a classic tale, right?
Yeah. And Harper's Ferry sounds like a Stephen King novel.
Definitely does.
Welcome to Harper's Ferry, where the river ferries the dead.
Ooh, nice.
I mean, that's definitely an interesting concept. We've talked about the connection with water and spirits before, but
Yeah.
the idea that lost souls just trapped in the current of this river, or I guess multi-rivers, right? Isn't it multiple rivers in that area?
Yeah. I mentioned before the story that it's hugged between two rivers.
Oh, that's right.
It's actually located, Harper's Ferry, at the confluence of the Shenandoah and Potomac rivers. Also happens to be where the states of Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia collide, if you will. Which brings up a really interesting point that Dillon raised in his story about water and the idea of it trapping energy.
Oh, yeah.
Or being either a conduit or some kind of blockage, having some kind of interaction with maybe different energies, maybe spiritual energy. Like we've talked about,
Comes up all the time.
in our episode on spiritual architecture, barricading the boogeyman, if you remember that one.
Oh, yeah. Classic episode. I'd like to retouch on that, actually. One of my favorite concepts.
Yeah. But what is it with people falling right back to sleep after seeing a ghost?
Good question.
Yeah, we cover stories like that all the time where entities, gnomes, alien intruders, whatever you want to call them, whatever's experienced, somehow act as like a paranormal anesthesia, where people have this harrowing experience or a very uncanny, unsettling, never before experienced experience, and then they're like, well, I'm going to go back to sleep.
Sensory overload?
It's just interesting how your mind works, maybe in that hypnagogic state, or maybe it is some kind of otherworldly inducement of feeling.
Yeah. Man, I can't stop thinking about the ghost girl. The fact that she's a little girl is just such a sad idea. If these are, in fact, aware spirits and not some sort of residue.
That would suck to be trapped there.
Yeah.
It's temporary.
Although I guess it's better than being stuck in a house. If you can go to different houses or anything along the shore.
She was in the house, so she must have made her way. Must
Yeah.
be some liberty there. Maybe you're just stuck in Harper's Ferry. You know, maybe something about that town because it's kind of couched in these rivers, where the town itself is like a
Pittsburgh.
preserved space for ectoplasmic existence. You know, you just kind of you get the whole area. You can go to the diner, you can go to the movie theater.
I mean, that would be nice.
Can't leave Harper's Ferry.
Not just in a basement. How awful. I just haunt this guy's basement. I'm not allowed to go anywhere. Ugh.
That is such a classic kind of account, though, that you witness something and you tell somebody like, oh, yeah, well, our daughter used to play with her all the time.
I mean, that corroboration is always important, I think, in these stories.
Yeah.
Definitely makes them more compelling.
Harper's Ferry does look like a beautiful, beautiful place to visit in West Virginia. And there is plenty of lore there. I mean, you have Screaming Jenny, which sounds like a horrifying railroad track type ghost, phantom armies. And it's one that kind of sounds very similar to this, as well, as far as it being a little girl. Another famous, I guess, ghost in the area is the ghost girl of Jefferson Rock. The Jefferson Rock overlooks the river. Apparently, there's been a lot of sightings of this ghostly little girl.
Is she wet?
She's in 19th century clothing, and this is kind of cool. She's often seen holding hands with hikers and appearing near the trails.
Huh.
It's kind of a sweet ghost, maybe a helpful spirit.
We're just lost.
Or maybe one and the same, potentially.
Interesting.
But yeah, thank you, Dillon. Great story.
Yeah, cool area to check out, sounds like.
We appreciate it, man. Next, Chris. Turn your page to the next tale.
Oh, this is one of my favorite stories I think we've ever had submitted, because it is one of those, it's not necessarily a frightening story so much as it is almost a scientifically fastical. Does that make sense? That's not a word.
Fastical?
It is an incredible account. See what you guys think about this. This one was submitted with the title, The Space Between Everything, but I call it Dimensional Drawerway.
There you go. That's really good, Chris.
Play it up, John Boy.
When I was in high school, a lot of strange things happened in the house my dad built. He had moved it from a rural area our family had lived on since about 1860. Dad was a real DIY enthusiast. He spent a year building it by himself, learning cabinet making, woodworking, welding, and plumbing as he went along. Our family had a reputation for being, quote, water witches, people who could find water with a dowsing rod. My great-grandparents and extended family had found wells and aquifers for farmers in the early days of settling this area. I have a knack for that too, and seem to have an affinity for the paranormal. I can find lost objects and sometimes see and hear spirits. I've had a knack for dowsing rods and seem to be a magnet for the strange and unusual. Despite being a new build, the house was always active with eerie occurrences. You could hear voices and running tap water, and feel ghost cats jumping on the bed. But what happened to me isn't about spirits. Spirits in this house were a normal thing. This is beyond the paranormal. It's about a bizarre event that defies reality itself. One night, during an ordinary school week, I was sound asleep when I was suddenly awakened by a strange humming noise. It vibrated through the floorboards and the bed, making everything feel alive, instantly waking me up and putting me on edge. When I opened my eyes, I saw a faint magenta glow filling the room. I looked around, trying to find where it was coming from, and realized it was coming from a drawer in my bureau. Despite the weirdness of it all, I wasn't scared. I felt an irresistible urge to open the drawer, driven by curiosity more than anything. I got up, walked over, and opened it slowly. The humming intensified, and the magenta glow brightened the entire room. Inside the drawer, I saw something that looked like a conveyor belt, stretching off into the horizon. It was surreal, like a portal to another world. Without thinking much about it, I reached into my backpack and pulled out my math book. I placed it on the conveyor belt inside the drawer and watched as it slid away into oblivion. I closed the drawer, went back to bed, and fell into a deep sleep almost immediately. The next morning, the memory of what had happened was vivid but felt dreamlike. I went to school as usual, but when math class came around, my book was nowhere to be found. In our school, textbooks were free unless you lost them, and then you had to pay to replace them. After a few days of borrowing a book from my friend, my parents had to cough up $100 to get a new one. My mom grilled me for days about what had happened to my math book. Each time, I got a scared look on my face and clammed up. I couldn't bring myself to explain the bizarre event that I experienced. It wasn't until I was in my 30s that I finally told her what had happened. To this day, she says that anything she puts in that drawer randomly disappears. As if the void between universes is still open, waiting to take whatever it can.
I like that.
What a story.
I do not know what to make of that.
It's so off the wall. It's so, yeah.
It would explain disappearing object phenomena.
It's weird that it's a conveyor belt.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Or is that just what our mind interprets as whatever we're seeing in that, whatever that person's seeing in that drawer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's no way to comprehend it really in our terms, but your mind makes sense of it and then projects it in a way that you would understand.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it sounds like a hypnagogic experience at first. You could definitely chalk it up to see, like there's a growing light in the room, maybe you're sleepwalking. You open a drawer, you're not really seeing this kind of hallucination of what you're seeing in this dream in-between state.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting. That gives it the magic to the story, is that the textbook was gone. And then years later, the mother says every time she puts something in there, eventually it just disappears.
Right.
Definitely interesting. Like, what is going on there?
Fantastic tale.
Yeah. Dresser Stargates.
You have to suspend your disbelief a little bit just because it is so out there. Stranger things, though.
But that kind of stuff happens a lot. I mean, you brought that up, disappearing object phenomena,
Yeah.
where things will just apport out of where they were, out of a drawer or whatever.
They will de-apport. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't hide in there during hide and seek.
Yeah. Stay out of that drawer.
Probably too small, I would imagine.
Or was it in a closet?
It was in the drawer of a bureau,
What is a bureau?
like a tall dresser.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Stay out of that dresser.
Yeah.
Stay out.
It's like a sci-fi Narnia.
Like a wardrobe? That's a wardrobe, right?
Yeah, Lion Witch in the Wardrobe kind of idea to another world. But that world sounds like I wouldn't want to go. It doesn't sound like a snowy, pan-filled.
Well, you don't know what's on the other end of that conveyor.
That's what I mean.
Could be a giant space mouth.
Yeah, it sounds too mechanical to be friendly.
The universe ate my textbook.
Anyways, fascinating tale.
Interesting story. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any thoughts about that. Maybe you've heard something similar somewhere. Definitely be something I'd like to look into.
Yeah. Conveyor belts and the space between.
Thank you for that submission.
Thank you, Kendra. That was a great story.
You know what I would not want to put in a drawer like that?
I can think of a few things.
You know what I'm going to say, don't you?
Oh, you're going to say your miracle-made sheets.
Yeah, especially right now because it is hot and humid in Northeast Ohio, and these sheets have come in handy because these sheets are silver infused.
That's right, there's silver in them, which not only we would claim protects you from the nasty spirits at night.
That's right.
Fairies and such.
You got a better chance anyway.
But maybe more importantly, for your slumber and health.
They keep you cool.
Yes, a cool night body is important, Chris.
Yes, it is.
But because of that silver, they are self-cleaning.
Oh, yeah.
Getting rid of that nasty bacteria.
And not only that, maybe my favorite part about these sheets is the weight. There really is this sort of quality when you can feel it when it lays on you. It's like a hug from the universe, like a cool night's breeze if it had arms.
Yes,
Swaddling
exactly.
you.
We can't recommend it enough, guys. We truly do love the sheets.
So yeah, get your 20% off. Head over to trymiracle.com/beliefhole.
What do you got to lose?
Yeah, upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/beliefhole and use the code BELIEFHOLE, all capital letters, to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off.
Towels.
Again, that's trymiraclemade.com/beliefhole to treat yourself.
And we'll have a link right in the episode description for you guys. So scroll down and click.
And thanks to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode. You keep us cool.
You keep us cool. You want to do the urn, Chris?
Sure, we're gonna do the urn. This one's pretty great. I enjoyed this one when it came in. Actually, this was on our Discord. If you guys have not signed up for our Discord, do it. There's a link in the show notes, and there's a special place to submit stories in there as well. And this actually came from that. Here it is. Yeah, this one's great. I think we can all relate to conflicts with roommates, but this is definitely a unique one. and somewhat terrifying. This is called Ghost from the Urn. I was in my room, and my roommate was in his room at our house. The garage door was slamming for like 10 minutes. Not continuously, but frequently. And I was drunk. I didn't want to get up. I thought he was just going in and out, grabbing some of his stuff in the garage, or going out to smoke in the backyard. I asked him about it in the morning, if he could not do that anymore, and he was like, "What the are you talking about? I thought that was you." So my next question was, and I was immediately pissed off, because I knew what was happening. "Is your dad's urn in my garage?" Yeah. I didn't think you'd notice, and I didn't want to keep it in my car." I was so mad, because I told him I didn't want that in my house. Back then, he had showed me a video of a black figure following him in his old house, and following him from his garage. I told him it was that haunted urn. The only reason the garage door kept banging was that I had a latch on it, so it couldn't just be opened. He got that urn out of my house, and it never happened again. I don't know if he still has it, or if he put his dad's ashes somewhere else, but I'm just glad that it is away from me. Anyone else have similar stories related to urns?
I'm glad I don't.
Kind of an obvious choice of an attachment.
Yeah.
As far as just the...
The receptacle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard of one, though.
A haunted urn?
I mean, I've never personally come across a story that I can remember.
Yeah.
I guess that would be the benefit of being cremated versus a coffin. If you are going to be attached,
This is something that you're stored in?
at least you're portable.
You're not underground
Yeah.
with the worms.
You're probably above a nice fireplace. You could watch Real Housewives of Orange County at night in the living room.
I guess you're kind of like a genie in that way.
Yeah, you're kind of like a genie.
I mean, it's interesting to think about that because the perspective is different. Obviously, for his roommate, it's probably kind of comforting that his dad's kind of around.
Mhm.
But for the other guy, it's creepy and kind of annoying
Yeah.
because he's making noises and walking around in the place.
Being all ghosty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of funny. He knew what the problem was. Did you bring your dad's urn into my garage, dude? I told you not to bring that here. Now look what's happening.
to bring your dad's urn here. Get your urn out of here, bro.
Get your urn out of here.
Kind of a fun little tale, but I hope his dad has found peace.
What do you guys want to be buried or cremated? I should probably know this.
I think we talked about this. I kind of like the idea of being laid out in a body farm where like animals just pick at you
Oh, yeah.
and you're not encased in anything.
Delicious.
And you just go the way you would go if you died in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'd like that idea, except maybe like cover me for the first like couple months and then the animals can have me.
They can have me, but just put me in like a canvas tent with like an opening. So like I still have privacy as my body is being eaten, but like animals can get to me.
how about you? They put you in like a maze, so the animals have to figure it out. Like they got to earn your taste.
They have to earn your taste.
They got to earn those chunks
Ugh.
of yum. I don't know what I'm saying.
Chunks of yum.
Get Chris Chunks of Yum by Crisco.
Oh, the one thing I forgot to mention, although I guess that was a story before, but the person who was talking about water witches and dowsing,
Yeah.
it was our great grandfather, I believe,
Water Witch.
was good at dowsing. He was kind of a water witch. That's how they found their wells on their farm.
I don't think he went by that title. I think a lot of people back then just, you use a farmer's almanac. You would douse to find water, where the well is, where you can dig a well.
Mm-hmm. But some people had a knack.
And yeah, I don't know if it was your great grandpa Alfred. We'll have to double check on that. But
Yeah.
No one cares or knows who Grandpa Alfred is.
well, I care. I'd like to double check.
Oh yeah,
Grandpa
for yourself.
Alfred.
I thought you were talking about for the listeners.
Well, yeah, we'll send out an email. Let you guys know
Guys, we found out.
which grandfather it
We'll have
was.
to double check that.
Great Grandpa Alfred, who came over to be a cowboy and ended up a fruit farmer.
That's true.
He was a water witch. And now you can sleep at night knowing the truth about Great Grandpa Alfred of the Belief Hole.
Cool.
Great Grandpa Alfred of the BELIEFHOLE. Okay.
That's a wonderful title.
Anyway,
What's next?
time for another.
Yeah.
Do another one.
Or this next story is kind of sweet and definitely interesting.
They're all interesting, or they wouldn't be on the show.
That's true. This story was submitted by Rain. And this happened in mid to late 2006 in Spring Hill, Florida. This is called Bye Bye Daddy.
I'll give some background first. I was too young to remember any of these encounters, and these are all recounts to me from my mother and my grandmother, who did witness and remember them. In 2006, my father passed away in my grandmother's house. After that, my mother moved herself and her 3 children, being me and my siblings, into my grandmother's house to grieve and have a helping hand in taking care of her children. It was shortly after this that the activity started. It was little things, cold spots in the house, dogs staring at nothing, lights flickering. Nothing that did anybody any harm, but my mother admitted that she was so busy with everything that she forgot all about it after a while. It was about 2 months later, and my mother and my grandmother were alone with me during a weekday. We were the only ones in the house at the time, and my mother and grandmother were talking to each other while I played in the middle of the room. The front door was open, as it was a summer in Florida, and we knew all our neighbors, so there wasn't any danger that they could think of. After a little while, I stopped playing and stared at the open door. My mother didn't think anything of it and ignored it until I stood up and began to walk towards the door. I'd gone quiet, no babbling or anything. My grandmother tried to call me back, but I wasn't listening. After about a minute or two of me staring into silence, I began to laugh at the open door. Laughing like I'd only laughed at my parents. Before my mother could even think about coming and closing the door, I waved at the open door. This was summer in Florida, but my mother said that cold air blasted in and that the entire room grew cold. Apparently, it was then that I said,
"Bye-bye, Daddy."
My mother and my grandmother watched the open door close. Not a harsh slam or anything, but like someone was leaving and shutting it behind them. After that, the room became warm again, and I went back to playing as normal. Now I'll flash forward to a few months later. My mother is back in our original house on her own. My aunt and her husband have come to visit. There's been no activity since leaving my grandmother's house, and my grandmother said that when we left, everything stopped. During my aunt's stay, their car's battery died. They took it out whilst they waited to get jumper cables in the next few days. Now, my aunt and her husband had a very abusive relationship. Physically, verbally, everything. Whilst they were here, they got into a bad argument. Hitting, screaming, the works. My mother refused to let them argue in a house with children in it and told them to go outside and that she was going back to sleep. When they go outside, my aunt's husband began to yell at her. All of a sudden, the same car that they'd taken the battery out of began to flash its lights. The horn started blaring and the alarm wailed. It was so loud that it woke everyone in the house. My aunt's husband tried to stop the noise and the lights, but nothing he did worked. Even putting the battery back in did nothing. It wasn't until my mother finally came outside that everything stopped. Like someone hit a switch. My aunt and her husband left a few days later, and that was the end of all the activity. My mother swears with everything she has that it was my father who manipulated the car somehow. He and my aunt were very close. Now that I'm an adult, I've had a few other unrelated experiences of my own, but I think I might save those for another submission. Thank you for reading this and giving me a chance to share my story.
Good story.
Great story. Dad the Avenger.
I'm sorry, but if I see a child speaking to someone that's not there and address them by name, someone who's passed away, and then the door
Yeah.
closes, like they've left.
It's pretty concrete evidence of the afterlife.
That to me would be like, okay,
Not to mention the room was freaking cold after, like in Florida during the summer.
Yeah. In the summer heat.
that's true, the temperature drop. But that visual of the door closing after that,
Yeah.
Bye-bye, and then the door closes.
I mean, at that point, I would start to believe in ghosts if I saw that happen.
You don't know?
Even if you didn't already.
Well, I do. I'd start all over again. It'd be so profound.
Start from the beginning.
I like the
too, that future. I mean, obviously the domestic violence saddens me, but I like the visual of it. It reminds me of, this is probably really dumb and I apologize, but Roseanne, it reminds me of like Dan Connor defending Jackie. Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Hmm.
When Fred becomes abusive, but he comes back as a ghost. He doesn't really in the show, but if he did die, I imagine he'd do that.
I thought you were going to say the moments where John Goodman as Dan, such a good performance where he would get angry and I would get scared.
Oh, yeah. He's a big man.
Because it was the comedy was so good that when it would switch on a dime like that and like he was serious, you're like, oh, this guy's like, Dan's mad.
But yeah, but that protectiveness, protecting the sister-in-law.
Dan, yeah, he was a big dude too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like that protective nature of the story.
No, that's
like,
great.
You know, he's still around, and like when he needs to, he makes himself aware to stop something bad from happening or escalating.
It's a nice change too in that kind of story. You know, we talk all the time about entities that are drawn towards negative energy, and a lot of times the kind of intense conflict and that friction of when people are fighting, interfamily turmoil and broken homes, where there is that kind of constant negative energy, where it's a symbiotic relationship almost, because people that are in emotional relationships like that are butting heads with each other, creating this kind of tumbling, undulating, nasty energy through this abusive kind of relationship that things can feed on, you know, that we've talked about on the other side. But at the same time,
Darker things, yeah.
Like gremlins and planes.
Exactly. But also these things can, depending on what you believe about what the rules are, quote unquote, I guess the Beetlejuice type rules, they can do things to manifest that rage within you.
There's a tempest in me.
And inspire situations where you might get into more fights or just be more, you know, people's personalities can change completely.
Oh, right.
If they're in homes that are possessed or haunted, and then they become haunted.
The Amityville argument.
Yeah.
Whatever you think about that. But
And so it's a nice switch to hear like a spirit being there to tamp down when there is fighting, you know?
well, yeah, well, I think that obviously this would be, you could look at it, this is as a different sort of thing. It's
Manipulate in a positive way.
It's not a demonic entity. It's a loved one that's passed. So it's there. It's coming to the rescue. Like a lot of rescue stories you hear, it's not a demonic paranormal parasite situation.
You know, yeah, you say that. I always think in the back of my head, there's always people out there that believe that there is no, you cannot communicate with a spirit. Spirits, they're gone instantly. Depending on your religion, there are those that believe that anything that we encounter that is, quote, paranormal, supernatural, that it is
Oh, some kind of trick?
just demonic, that it is the devil tricking you.
Yeah, some people believe that.
Yeah,
I don't, but
right. I just wanted to mention that because
yeah, there's also, like we talk about the Chindi a lot, there's examples of aspects of people that are left behind. They might not be the soul of the person,
right.
but they're like the residue of a spirit, aspects of that person's,
Yeah,
maybe the less desirable aspects, whether it's a violent side of a person or just like a lost, confused side of a person. That could be an argument for what you see that's not necessarily a soul left behind, but who knows?
yeah. It's the spirit scum, just that bit of ghost crud that gets left from your higher consciousness that ascends, right, John?
Yes.
But again, if it's protective, I would say it's somewhat sentient, maybe sticking around to help out. That's a good thought.
Well, thank you for that story, Rain. That was a beautiful story. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's a good story to take a quick break on.
I think so.
For sure.
All right, guys, when we get back from this break, you're not going to want to miss out because we've got incredible stories of forest walking away. You'll have to wait around to see what that exactly means. We've got the Dark Synagogue coming up, which is pretty incredible and pretty terrifying tale from Aubrey. Also stories of astral dog communication, among others. So
What's going on for expansion?
Expansion is going to be fascinating. We're going into the past, the 1860s. That's right. Where one of the most traumatic events occurred, you could argue created maybe the most fertile soil for hauntings in America. The Civil War, of course, is what I'm speaking of. I've got some really compelling stories and unsettling encounters from Mark Nesbitt's book, Gettysburg Ghosts.
Yeah, some great stories in there.
Who actually, we saw his shop when we went to Gettysburg last year, and Jeremy and I have been wanting to do this episode since we went. There's something about the atmosphere there. You can feel that energy.
Oh yeah, very heavy.
It's going to be really compelling. And actually, this came up because, John, you sent us a clip that you wanted to discuss of a man by the name of David Packer, who's had an interesting life involving mediumship abilities.
Oh yeah, encounters with spirits.
And that ties into the Civil War. So you're definitely going to want to check it out. Here is a quick clip of the expansion.
we'll see you on the other side.
Access granted.
It is not unusual for some college administrators to work some late nights. The bustle of the daylight hours over, a lot can be accomplished in the quiet, darkened halls of Old Dorm. One evening, as it is related by a third college administrator, 2 colleagues had just wrapped up a couple of hours working overtime on the 4th floor of Pennsylvania Hall and entered the elevator to take them to the exit on the 1st floor. They summoned the device. The elevator stopped at the basement level. The doors opened to reveal not the area once cleaned up for storage, but a scene out of time and reason. The blood-stained doctors and orderlies of a century before, again performing their abhorrent and hideous tasks. The lighted numerals in the elevator displayed their descent, 3, 2, 1, and continued past the 1st floor. Absent-mindedly, they pushed the button for the 1st floor again, wondering why the elevator hadn't stopped, or perhaps who in the basement had summoned the elevator. The doors opened to a scene of slicing sinew and sawing bone and suturing artery and vein and tying ligaments, of carrying armloads of severed limbs to grisly, blood-dampened corners and dumping them there unceremoniously. The administrators punched at the buttons frantically, hoping it was merely a temporary short in the modern elevator and not a permanent hole in time through which they had fallen towards a ghastly frozen moment, fearing what might really be holding them captive witnesses to the scene. One of the harried orderlies turned toward them and began to look beseechingly into their eyes for help with the never-ending work, or perhaps for help to find some way out of the subterranean scene where he himself had been held in forced incarceration for 12 decades. As he took a step toward them, finally, slowly, the doors began to close. Both administrators are gone now from Gettysburg to other facilities of higher education, yet while they remained, true professionals that they were, they continued some nights to work after dark in Old Dorm. But it is also known that after putting in their extra hours, as they left the structure that once in the past, and once more recently, echoed with the cries and moans of torn men and boys, they always chose to use the stairs.
Hey guys, welcome back from the break.
Welcome back, fellers and women.
Fellers and women, we hope it was tasty and special for you.
You guys have gotten strange over the course of this break.
John had a ham and cheese hot pocket on the break. He said it was really good.
I would never put a hot pocket in my body
He eats 2 a day.
unless I was starving to death.
If you were starving to death, that would be an amazing food to save you.
It's true.
I mean, how good would that be?
I'd be very grateful.
I think your brain would overload with flavor. You'd probably have a heart attack. A stroke. Hot pocket stroke.
Let's do the show.
All right. We are coming back with a story for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. This next account is the sort of account that I really enjoy, the ones that involve haunted hotels.
Oh, yes.
And specifically, this hotel, the Inn at Jim Thorpe, is the sort of inn that draws you in.
What a good pun.
You'll see what I mean. This is a really interesting account. Let me know what you guys think, brothers of the whole. This comes to us from Alex, and this happened in 2018 while visiting the Inn at Jim Thorpe in Pennsylvania on Christmas, no less. And this is called My Family is in There.
Our story starts on Christmas of 2018. I believe when my mother gave my girlfriend and I a gift certificate to the inn at Jim Thorpe in Pennsylvania. My parents had driven through and thought it looked like a nice place to spend the weekend, and it was only a few hours from our home. As someone who is interested in the paranormal and the general history of places, I did a quick search of the inn and discovered that many past presidents have stayed there, and that it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the state. I read several of the stories of hauntings, and they seem more like annoyances, such as a sink turning itself on, or a pair of boots moving to a hallway on their own, or the sound of children laughing. So I figured we would be fine if something did happen.
And if I just told my girlfriend about the presidents that stayed there, but left out the haunting part, maybe she wouldn't lose sleep over it. I made a mental note that the commonly haunted rooms were 210, 211, and 310. We checked into the hotel, and I was a little relieved to not be assigned any of those rooms. Our room was on the second floor, and at the top of the stairs, you can turn left towards rooms 210 and 211, or you can turn right towards our room. So, we get to the top of the stairs, and I turn right towards our room, and my girlfriend turns left. I say, "Hey, our room is over here." So then she follows me to the right. I figure it's the first time going to the room. She must not have known which way to go. After dropping our stuff off, we leave to explore the hotel and walk down the street to visit some of the shops. After a while of walking around, we go back to the hotel to get ready for dinner. So, we go up the stairs, and my girlfriend turns left again. So again, I tell her the room is to the right, and so she follows me to the right, and we go get ready for dinner. Following dinner, we return to the hotel, and we walk up the stairs, and again, she turns left. So this time, I say, "Hey, why do you keep going left?" She doesn't say anything, but she walks down the left hallway, puts both of her hands on a door, and says,
My family's in there.
It was room 210. I was a little sketched out at that point, but still didn't want to say anything, because now I would have to tell her she is in a haunted hotel and has been walking to this known to be haunted room over and over. I asked her why she said what she said about her family being in there. She just said,
I don't know.
So we both just walked back to our room down the right hall. Nothing else happened that trip, and we both slept fine. I told her on the car ride home after checking out of the inn, and as expected, she was shocked, and we both agreed that it was probably the spookiest, unexplainable thing to ever happen to us. Thanks again for providing space for people to share these stories, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Wow, what a story.
Yeah, that summoning. It's like she was being summoned to the room. I love that he didn't tell his girlfriend it was haunted before he took her there.
Maybe that allowed her to be more open to it, like affected by something.
Oh, because she wasn't expecting.
I'm sure she was suggestible by something because she wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, more open to it because she wasn't expecting it.
maybe if you know about it, you're kind of hoping for an experience or something. And then there's too much pressure on the ghosts, and they're like, I can't perform under pressure. But then she's like,
exactly.
you know,
I can't perform under pressure.
they find someone who's just like hanging out. They're like, I'll talk to you. I'll summon you I'll draw you to my room.
Or literally her brainwave or her brain may have been in a different state that's more suggestible.
Yeah, more plasticity to it.
What? No.
Spectral plasticity.
Spectral plasticity.
Plasticity.
Great band name. But yeah, no, it was almost like a quasi possession in a way.
Yeah, not quite a possession, but something was there for a second, like suggesting something. Yeah, it's. I wouldn't say it's a possession, but almost like a channeling.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's kind of a possession. I mean, it's not like a demonic possession, but it is. A spirit is taking over some living person's body, possessing it in that way.
Like Whoopi in Ghost.
Just like Whoopi. Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze, when people would, sit in her, and then they'd talk
Sit
through
in
her as like a medium, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what happened in the movie Ghost?
Mm-hmm.
But just temporarily. Just like a little, she was briefly, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't like a active possession. It might have just been like
A tuning in
on like maybe even a past experience there that has that residual, kind of spectral energy or whatever. Like that echo, the tape echo idea. But I wonder if tape echo can possess. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like if you can see a tape echo,
like an inanimate possession.
or if a medium can pick up on what happened there in the past, can you be taken over by it? Even though it may not be an animate or a conscious spirit.
Yeah, if you think about psychometry, where you touch something and a sensitive person can have visions of, in a way that's sort of possessing your mind when you are actively holding that object, even though it's not a personified possession.
Interesting stuff.
Indeed. Speaking of interesting stuff,
Yeah.
I just found a new favorite podcast of mine. The Y-Files. Guys, if you have not heard of the Y-Files, they are worth checking out.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, like a lot of podcasts that cover kind kind of the stuff we talk about that you guys may be interested in. Conspiracies, aliens, time travel, ancient civilizations.
Excellent.
And you know, a lot of podcasts out there are very serious. Maybe sometimes overly serious, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Believing every detail, every aspect, even if those details don't quite add up to a particular theory or conspiracy.
That's true, but then you get other shows where they destroy everything. Everything is thrown out with the baby in the bathwater.
That's right. They tear it down
Without really digging.
without having any fun.
That too.
You know, it's important to be open-minded and enjoy that space between. But that's why we like the Y-Files and why we're recommending this podcast.
Yes!
Yeah, and I love their structure. So they dig into the mystery, break it all down for you, and then they separate the fact from fiction, and you get to see what's left. And as we all know, some legends can't be debunked.
That's right.
And those are the kind you'll find at the Y-Files. So check them out, available on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Go get it. We'll have a link right in the episode description for you guys. So scroll down and click.
Remember the tagline from the X-Files, right, Jer?
Yeah, the truth is out there.
That's right. But the Y-Files would argue the truth is right here.
Well said.
The world is weird. Go bathe in that weirdness.
And tell them BELIEFHOLE sent you.
I had a weird thing happen to me yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
Do tell.
I was making dinner, and remember I told you I was having like, I'm not going to tell everyone, and they're going to say, oh, you're haunted because you do the show.
In that voice.
I've definitely, since I moved here, I've definitely had some, it's more just like electrical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Little touch lamps coming on occasionally. A lot of stuff with the TV as far as like pausing all the time. And
That's interesting.
just weird stuff like that.
Did you have your hair lifted up in your bathroom while you were
No.
making water late in the evening? Because that happened to me in your
Making
bathroom.
water? What does that mean?
It means to nictorate,
Yes.
Okay.
which means to pee.
Back to the story.
Keep going.
But yeah, no like bad feelings or anything. I honestly felt it was related to Jake for some reason. I just felt like he was here.
Oh, that's nice.
And yesterday I was making dinner and I was listening to this actually channeling of angels, I think, by this person.
Sounds normal.
And is normal for a belief holer.
I know.
And I have this spray can of avocado oil. And I was sitting right to the side of my vision, and it just started sliding towards me.
What?
And I looked over, and because it was weird. It was like visually strange, and it just kept going. It moved probably like another 3 inches, and I was
Weird.
like, "What the hell?" And I thought, like, it slid so smoothly. It looked like it was like sliding on,
Yeah.
like the oil itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I immediately grabbed the can. I tried to repeat it, and this is a pretty big can. This is not like a small can. And I tried, and it would not move at all. I mean, I could physically push it, but it was not like sliding or anything.
There's no liquid or anything
No,
on your
there's
counter?
no liquid, and it wasn't easy to just like, I couldn't just touch it and have it slide simply.
Yeah.
The way it moved was very like slow and methodical. And
Is there a slope on your counter?
No.
Weird.
no slope, no, like I said, I tried to recreate it by just pushing it gently, and it was like stuttering, like catching.
Weird, man. That
Yeah.
is bizarre.
It was very strange. I said, hi.
I do love those moments, though. That feels
I
like
said, hello.
Is that how you said hi to it?
I did.
John, I think I forgot to mention this when we were recording yesterday. We were about to go on a walk, leaving, your old place, our new place. And we walked out. I don't think I told you this. And a young guy pulled up in a truck and said, "You have a beautiful home." Did I tell you this?
No.
Okay, so he goes, "You got a beautiful home." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." And he's like, "Yeah, I grew up here. I grew up in that house." And I was like, "Oh, really? Well, you want to come in and check it out?" So he comes in, nice guy. He's going through the house. He's like, "Oh my gosh, this is blowing my mind. This is blowing my mind. It used to be like this. This is the same," that kind of stuff. And we get upstairs, and I forget how it came up.
He said, he goes, "Man, that closet used to always creep me out."
Oh, that's right.
And I was like, "Oh, the haunted closet?"
In the bedroom?
Yeah. The same one that I heard thumps from when we were downstairs when we first moved in. There was nothing in the house. You've mentioned what creeped you out.
I just casually called it the haunted closet.
Yeah, he goes, "Oh yeah, this place is haunted." He said, "We had so many strange things happen here when I was growing up." No, but he said nothing dark,
Yeah,
but it was definitely like activity.
definitely paranormal.
Yeah. The other day when we were recording, and I was recording up in the room, I was hearing, it was before we were recording, and I was editing a story, and I couldn't stop because we're coming up to the deadline before we were about to record. So I couldn't go investigate, but it was constant. Things being moved around downstairs. That's what it sounded like. Just nonstop.
Yeah, remember what happened with Jake? That was like insane.
Oh, yeah.
The whistler.
Whistle pinch?
Yeah.
Haven't heard any whistles yet. Just mostly footsteps and creaks and moves.
Well, they were very nice not to creep me out when Jake died because I had to stay there by myself for like a couple weeks.
Yeah, probably felt for you. And they were like, let's leave him alone.
Yeah.
Or maybe Jake was there like saying, don't bother him.
That's true.
Don't bother my guy.
Don't bother my master.
Anyway, we're ready for another tale.
Yes.
Yeah, that could actually lead us into a really good story from Hanzy.
Hanzy?
Remember Hanzy?
Yes, we just did was it the same? Oh, that was Hansel.
Oh, Hansel. different guy.
Did you hear that little clip I dropped?
No.
You didn't? In the thank yous?
Oh, yeah. From Zoolander.
It's like, oh, that Hansel's so hot right now.
That's right. That's great. Hanzy Driscol. Remember Hanzy Driscol?
Yes, he sent the skateboarder.
Yes. One of my favorite stories.
He was skateboarding down the hill and saw the homeless person.
His friend.
Oh, that's right.
His friend was.
It was his friend, yeah.
It was the warning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories I've heard on the show. We played.
Yeah, very memorable.
Yeah, well, he's got another great story, and I thought it would be nice to play it because it connects to you, Jonathan. This is called Dog Macho and the Dead Girl.
What's up, brothers of BELIEFHOLE? This is Hanzy Driscol. Thank you for using my scared skate story. That was awesome. Check it out. I just listened to Barks from Beyond, and I'm very sorry about Jake. And that was a really intense episode. That was really awesome. I was in the live chat, and people had really interesting stories, and it reminded me of this story. So Macho was this little chihuahua, and he was like my little soulmate, like how people have dogs and they're like family members. And everyone loved him. He was the most precious little sweetheart. And he passed away, and I had this dream. So in the dream, I walk into this room, and it's this well-lit room. And there's this beautiful red couch, like this really fancy, ornate, just high quality, ruby red, beautiful couch. And Macho's on the couch. And I walk in there, and he's sitting there with this beautiful girl, like around 28 to 30, beautiful, curly, long blonde hair, like not too long, but just right past her shoulder. And she was just sitting there super happy, like petting my dog. And I walk in the room, and I was like, oh my God. And he saw me, and he started doing exactly what he did when he was alive. And I ran over there and kneeled down, and I was petting him, and it was just totally him. And like I could just feel him, and he was just looking at me, and we were just like together. And it was like this long, slow dream. Like he didn't, like how dreams change and they're just crazy. Like he didn't like turn into a hummingbird, and then we're at the beach, and then where I was like eating a sandwich, like how dreams change. No, this was a long, slow dream, like how this reality is. And so I was there, and I was petting him, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like petting him and just super happy. And I turned to her and I said, where are we? And she looks at me, and she's still kind of smiling. And I said, Macho's dead. Where are we? And right then, her face turned to pure shock. And she was staring in my eyes, and I was staring in her eyes, and I was like, oh no. and I'll never forget her just staring at me like, huh, what? And so right then, the whole scene started pushing, like going away from me. And like how in those old cartoons, when it's over, it goes into like a tiny circle in the middle of the screen and just gets smaller and smaller. Well, that's exactly how this dream was. And I was pushing and running and trying to go back through that tunnel thing to go to him as it was closing, because I wanted to stay there, but it just closed up. And I'll just never forget the look on that lady's face, because she did not know that she was dead. But I just wanted to send this to you guys so that you can listen to it and just know that, life goes on. Just like he said at the end of the episode, you will see him again. So I love you guys. Talk to you soon.
What a story.
Yes, it does go on. I'm pretty convinced of that. It reminds me of that story that we had a long time ago about that guy that said something. He was like in a dream and he told a woman like, you're not real or something.
Yes. That was, we were doing Nightmare Land, a book by, I can't remember his name right now, but he was a producer on Coast to Coast. Awesome book. But yeah, the story was, it was the guy who was doing a lot of like lucid dreaming. And in this dream, there was a girl, he was at a jazz bar, and the girl was sitting on his lap and they were having a good time. And then he like went to kiss her, or she rejected him or something. And he's like, oh, it doesn't matter because you're not real anyway or something. And she burned him on the hand with a cigarette.
That's right, yeah.
And he woke up and his hand was burned.
Yeah.
It was almost like he pulled it out of that dream. But yeah, Hanzy's story reminds me of, I think I told you about this, John, that very short thing I had weird with Jake after he died when I was sleeping. And it was like, I was drifting off and then suddenly I was in what looked like a version of your living room at the time down at the Clinton house.
Oh, that's right.
And
yeah.
Jake was there. And it was like sudden, Jake's here.
And he's just barked at you.
Yeah, I startled him. But it reminds me of that, like almost like an astral travel. I think that might be what was going on with Hanzy in this dream state, maybe astral traveling to maybe seeing his dog. And then, of course, the girl being there.
I mean, a lot of stuff that I listened to, it's like we live in these overlapping universes.
Yeah.
You know? So we're not really even occupying different space. It's just like a different frequency sort of thing.
It's shifting.
Exactly. Your eyes opening up.
Yeah, there's certain times that for whatever reason, you seem to be able to overlap in these other dimensional spaces, especially when you're asleep and you're dreaming.
Yeah. Well, also, I think it's the idea that like, yeah, when you're in that dream state, how connected is that space to that limbo space between this life and the next, the afterlife, you know, and the idea that maybe if you're connected to a spirit, like in this case, you know, dog, Macho, like the idea that animal spirits can be spirit guides, helping you move on to the next life or teaching you something. But the idea that if you're connected to someone or an animal that passed away, that you might be able to eavesdrop into the afterlife via dream.
Oh, because you're connected on some level?
Into the afterlife of someone else who's like basically passing through that limbo space of like being introduced to
that makes sense.
The next life. You can kind of connect to it maybe because of that attachment.
Yeah.
Potentially. But because the dream space is such a strange liminal space where it does seem like you mentioned, you know,
overlapping.
It didn't feel, you know, when you're in a dream.
Yeah.
And you know, the difference between that and the kind of, that did not feel like a dream. That felt like another life, you know, like a real, like time was normal. I experienced something. I just think to explore dreams like that is very interesting.
Yeah. Thanks, Hanzy. I appreciate the love for Jake.
Yeah.
And send it right back at you.
Yeah. Love you too, brother. Thanks, man. All right. Next on the docket.
This next account is fascinating.
Yeah, this is
very unique.
We're going back down under, guys, to Mount Evelyn, Victoria, Australia.
All right.
This took place in September of 2001. A fellow named Dave, I've actually been talking to in order to do some follow-up for the story. And it's a truly fascinating account of high strangeness in the outback. It touches on the idea of fairies.
The Green Man.
Stepping into a world just beyond our own, and the glimpses that you might see. Without further ado, let's play The Forest Walked Away.
About 22 to 23 years ago, when I was 19, I decided to take my 15-year-old sister fishing down at a little creek so she could catch her first trout. The creek is only 4 or 5 kilometers from where we lived, and it always produced good quality trout. It was about 1 p.m. when we parked the car and walked the 200-odd meters along a little track through the bush to the creek. The bush in this area stays very green and moist all year round. It's a spot you should avoid if you have a fear of leeches, because you're guaranteed to get at least 2 on you at some stage. When we got to the creek, I set up our rods, and then we just sat there, relaxing and enjoying the scenery. It was about an hour and a half later that I stood up and walked about 10 meters to go and take a slash, when I noticed a vine moving about 3 meters up in a tree. It looked a bit like a snake climbing up a tree, but I knew it wasn't a snake. All of a sudden, the bush came to life.
I mean, there was a fern, a half-rotten log, a sort of grass, and just bushes. It stood up in front of me. The fern, it was about 1.2 meters tall, was now 5 to 6 feet tall, but somehow looked exactly the same. A sort of log man must have been laying down because it was now standing up straight next to the fern man. Like the log man, I didn't see the others getting up because my brain must have been trying to figure out what I was looking at when the fern man stood up. I was completely focused on the fern, but could still see the others standing around. They looked to us like normal plants, only they had human faces. The fern man's face is what I was stuck on. Imagine the brown base of the fern being the body, and all the green fern leaves were its hair. Where the green leaves came out of the base is where its face was. It's hard to explain, but it all blended into a face with tiny little black pig eyes. I don't remember seeing an actual nose or mouth because it had sticks, bark, and other stuff from the bush on it. But its eyes were obvious because they were the only clean, shiny bit, so they stood out. I heard my sister make a gasping sort of noise, so I turned to see her looking up at these things. She just sat there crying. But I was more in a state of confusion and didn't know how to react. I put it down to some sort of military camouflage testing program or a university project of some sort. The only thing that got me thinking is the fact that if they were people, why stand hidden for so long while we fished? And why not say anything, especially when they can see my sister crying in fear? They just stood there staring at us for a few seconds without saying anything or making any sounds. Then they turned and walked into the bush, disappearing instantly. I remember standing there for a few seconds looking at the ground, seeing if I could see where they came from, but the bush looked exactly like it did when we first got there. Nothing had changed. I can't remember packing up our equipment or even getting back to the car, but I do remember getting home and telling my mom and dad about it. We didn't talk about it for 20 years after that. Then, 2 years ago, this all hit home for me when I was called out to do a fencing quote on Alinda Creek Road. I turned up with my 3-year-old daughter, Indy. I measured all the boundary fencing, and then the old man I was working for asked me about my availability. I told him that I could start whenever, and that I work when I want to, for as long as I want because I choose to be with my daughter over spending time at work. I like to finish early to take her fishing, or just go bushwhacking, looking for yowies. He smiled and said,
Yowies, huh?
I said, "Yep, the Australian Bigfoot." That's when Indy bent down and picked up a little fairy garden ornament. The old fella said,
Do you like fairies? They live on my property, but they are invisible most of the time. You will only see them if they let you see them.
He then looked at me and said, and John, this is you again.
Dad knows them. You've seen the forest people before, haven't you?
Then it all came back to me. I said, yes, I have. That's when I realized that his property was just the opposite side of the creek where I'd seen them 22 years earlier. I messaged my sister, asking her if she remembers seeing the bush come to life about 20 years ago. She replied,
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
I couldn't believe that was her only thought about it. I know she was afraid at the time, so maybe it's her way of forgetting. All in all, I know what I saw, and I tell heaps of people. I don't care what people think or what people say. I see it as a gift, and I'm glad I've seen them. It's made me realize that anything is possible, and anything can exist. Everything comes from somewhere. I just hope the bloody dog man doesn't feel the same as the forest people and pop his head out of the little portal to show me he's also real. That prick can stay hidden. That's it for now. Keep up the good work, fellas.
I feel you on that.
Yeah. Dave, great story, man. Yeah, great corroboration. I just love that turn at the end where, 20 years later, it's like, oh yeah, there's a Faye
on my property. Your dad's seen them.
It all comes back.
And then he remembers, and he realizes it's the exact same. It's the other side of that property that he happens to be fencing 20 years later.
Yeah.
There is something there in this area. It's so cool.
Yeah.
What do you think those other things were?
You mean the things that stood up and walked away?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he thinks that they are fairies, elementals.
Well, it sounds a lot to me like the English tradition of the Green Man. Remember we covered that really weird story from 40 and Times where this I think he was actually a journalist, but he was driving down a road in some bucolic area in England, and he's looking out in this field and sees this kind of strange plant out there, and then it gets up and he realizes that, this is like a living entity, and it like runs off into the woods.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that.
Little pig eyes.
Yeah, it's weird.
These things had.
That is a weird part.
Yeah. It's interesting that his response was not fear, that he was more just curious. It sounds like, where his sister was, crying in fear.
Yeah.
Because it seems like that would be something that would be pretty terrifying. But I guess unless you're in a kind of state or connected to, nature. He said he's always been very connected with nature. Actually, I'll put a link for you guys. He's got some pretty interesting videos. He has a YouTube channel. It's like around his land out there in the outback, and his daughter, and kind of just they're bushwhacking and looking for yowies, which is awesome. But he's got an interesting video with like a print that he found on his property, but a really creepy video. If you think that it might actually be what he thinks it might be, or how he titled the video, it was called like the killing grounds, or something, or the feeding grounds. And it's just all of these bones of animals and like fresh sheep, like dead sheep, just kind of littered around this area, right outside the bush, wherever he is, maybe Victoria, Australia. But it's a really creepy video, just like coming across and seeing this kind of, stark desert-looking landscape with a few like tree trunks and bush here and there, and then just like there's like a pit of bones, and then outside of that are just like just sheep carcasses, just kind of scattered.
This is in the video?
Yeah.
Weird.
And I guess the property is, he doesn't think anyone lives there or owns it. I don't know if there's any buildings on the property, but it's right outside the bush. Anyways, I'll link to it. But it's interesting. But that sounds like a great pastime, just yowie hunting in the outback.
Yeah.
But he might have a chance of seeing it, considering the fact that he was gifted this experience with the Fae. And the guy, by the way, the fella that was like, your dad's seen him, telling him essentially he's seen him.
Right. Like he recognized that in him.
He apparently is a professor in biology, but he can't ever tell people about his experience.
Oh, because of his career?
Yeah.
Academia?
They would think he's a loony. So it would obviously put his career at risk. So he's a closeted fairy friend, this fellow that he met. But that's sad that you have to hide away your belief in the Fae. But yeah, thank you for that story, Dave. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Let us know if you run into a yowie.
All right, we're gonna be tabling Dark Synagogue. I know I advertised it early in the episode because we were going to do it, but I realized it is quite an odyssey. And there are some things I want to ask the submitter about this pretty incredible story. So we're going to save that and go with another story I had ready to go. This is a really creepy. I don't know if cool is the right word. It's a creepy experience. This is Man in the Mirror.
So I was about maybe 4 years old or so, was young. And in the first apartment we had, it was on the same block as my grandma. And this was back in the 90s. The person who used to live there was an, I think, Orthodox Jewish person. I think he was a rabbi. Our landlord described him as having the curls and the whole black cot, everything. And he had a little white dog. He was X'd out, Hitman style, with one between the eyes and then stuffed in the closet in the bedroom, the only bedroom. And it's crazy because we didn't know until later. So we moved in, fantastic, it was lovely, beautiful apartment, had this huge kind of, it was almost top to midway down one of the walls in the living room, this mirror, beautiful mirror, loved it. And I remember that night, my mom and the females of my family were chilling, drinking, whatever, just celebrating. My mom had seen something. She saw this man and she saw the dog, and he kind of tipped his hat to her and left. She woke up with the only fever, her kidneys. She had to go to the hospital. Like, all these things were happening. And it was like a couple, 3 or 4 days of her being like that. She was better. And then she talked to the landlord and she said, hey, did this person live here, look like this, and have this, and this dog? And the guy turned pale. He's like, how the hell do you know that? And she's like, oh, he came by to say hello and goodbye, and I saw his dog. And he's like, yeah, like this happened to him and blah, blah, blah. It was, on Christmas of all days. And then, we moved in like maybe the summer, almost the middle of summer. So it was weird. It was really weird. And I remember in that apartment, oh my God, because of our culture, we have very Afrocentric from Dominican Republic. So we have Afrocentric belief system. And I remember every time at night, you would hear the pots, the pans, everything just being turned upside down. And my mother would send me to go check. And in that apartment, our kitchen, dining room, the main hallway that connected the doorway, the foyer, and the hallway towards the bathroom and the bedroom, and then the living room, the doorways were all lined up. And there was some space in the doorway so you could hide behind it. And the sink was back to the doorways. So I hated washing dishes because I always saw and felt these things peeking. And you could see them kind of hiding and peeking and looking around. And every time I would check in the kitchen, turn on the light, nothing would be out of place, go back to bed. Not even a minute or two later, you hear this all over again. And you'll see like shadows always in the apartment. It was creepy. It was so awful. I was petrified every single time. Having to go and like get something for my little sister when she was born. I would have to go and get her bottles, make her milk, and yada yada. And it was just like, please, Mom, please, please, please. And she just like, just go, just go. And it's so crazy because when tables turned, I was more into the paranormal, always have been. And when she got older, my door just opened by itself. Okay, I'm done. Oh my God.
Karina, are you
Wow.
okay?
That's crazy.
What happened to you, Karina?
I was not expecting that at the end.
That was her last SpeakPipe submission, so I hope she's okay.
Is she going to say that when her mom got older, she made her do something?
Yeah, what was that last thought?
Maybe her mom was less into or didn't want to talk about the paranormal. That was my guess because it seemed like the tables had turned for them.
Maybe she took her mom to haunted houses and forces her to walk down the hallway at night.
Crazy story. The picture of a different religion, but the Hasidic Jew or the
rabbi,
whatever sort of version of Judaism, it reminds me a bit of there's that scene where he comes to the door, Poltergeist. But it's like the fundamentalist Quaker sort of guy
singing that creepy song.
He is in his temple or whatever it is.
His holy temple. Yeah,
his holy temple.
God is in his holy temple. Earthly thoughts be silent now.
Creepy guy.
Creepy, yeah. So that's pretty. Yeah.
It sounds like he was friendly.
Yeah, that's good.
He waved to him with his little dog.
Yeah, well, so was the Poltergeist guy at first.
That's true.
Creepily friendly.
Why would the dog be there? Was the dog also X'd out?
Assassinated? I don't know, but you can totally see, like, when she was talking about the things that would peek around, it just reminds you of, like...
Yeah, what is that?
When you have a violent end, does it open some sort of...
Feeders come.
Does it create a rift in that area where, like, things from the other side that might be darker come because of the energy of that's sort of exiting this life?
The dark trauma of not only the guy who exited this life in that, horrific assassination, which was hopefully quick, but also the assassin who's obviously has to be a disturbed person with a terrible, their own attachments, just that kind of leaving that energy. Yeah. What things come to feed these little gremlins that are moving pots and pans around at night, flipping them upside down.
Very strange.
Yeah. Inverting the holy pot. Yeah. But great story.
Yeah.
I hope you're okay. Let us know what happened to you, Karina.
Yeah.
Hopefully that door didn't take you out.
Yeah.
What a way to end a SpeakPipe. That's pretty great. My door's open. I'm going to be done. I'm done now.
Oh. Well, that's a great way to end the show, too.
Yeah.
It's a great final story of the evening. Thank you, everyone, for who you are.
Yes.
For submitting stories and making the whole great. again.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really do.
We got a bunch of awesome episodes lined up for the season. So we look forward to some great digging we're going to be doing.
Oh, absolutely. And guys, for those of you out there who've signed up at Black Eyed Cool Kid and up and are waiting to hear your name on the thank yous, apologies.
Yeah.
With the production of this episode and all the things we're doing in the back end over the break, we didn't have time for thank yous today.
But if you signed up and you're not sure if we have read your name, maybe you missed an episode here or there,
Or you think maybe we did miss it somehow.
yeah, feel free to shoot us an email and we'll make sure that you are on that list and you will be read if you haven't.
That's right. Just go to BELIEFHOLE.com and click contact, and you may contact us.
And don't forget, guys, head over to Dark Mountain Ambience on YouTube to check out our latest Ambience video, our Norse mythology, folklore, atmosphere video of sorts.
That's right, guys. Go to Dark Mountain Ambience, link in the show notes, and live inside the mystery of Dark Mountain.
And one of the big announcements I alluded to at the beginning of the episode is finally the launch of our merch store. We've got a couple things up there right now, but we've got some great stuff we've been working on for a couple months now with the help of some close friends of ours.
Brad and Sam,
Yes.
thank you.
And we were so close, we thought we would be launching it this episode drop. But of course, Big Brother reminded us that we have to figure out how we have to pay taxes.
Not John.
Not John Big Brother, but the government.
Metaphorical Big Brother.
The evil eye.
Came in with some more hoops to jump through, along with some other wrinkles that need ironed out, pun intended,
Oh, it works for merch, yeah.
because they're clothes.
These designs are awesome. We tested them. We made sure to get quality shirts.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Ones that don't come apart in the wash or feel so thin that you can see through them.
Or explode in your hand.
Anyway, more on that next time. But next episode will be the launch.
That's right. Merch store will be open by the next episode, so keep your eyes and ears peeled.
Peel them up.
And we hope to see you at the next premiere.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time
On
BELIEFHOLE.